The rain came down in sheets. A cold, relentless curtain that blurred the world into shades of gray. Ezra stood on the cracked sidewalk, his sneakers sinking into a puddle, as the door to his childhood home slammed shut behind him. His father's final words, "You're no son of mine," cut deeper than the November chill ever could. He was 18, barely a man, but the weight of those words pressed him into the earth like he'd lived 100 years of shame. His backpack, stuffed with whatever he could grab in the 5 minutes his father had given him, sagged against his shoulder. The rain soaked through his hoodie, through his skin, into his bones. But he didn't move. Not yet. He wanted to scream, to pound on the door, to beg his father to see him, not the label, not the sin, but him. But the house stood silent, its windows dark, as if it had already forgotten him. Ezra's breath hitched, a sob he refused to let out. He turned, the street stretching out before him like a question with no answer. Where do you go when the only home you've ever known spits you out? He didn't know, but he started walking. The town of Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, was small, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and your secrets, whether you wanted them to or not. It was the kind of place where being gay wasn't just a scandal, it was a betrayal. Ezra had known this his whole life, had felt it in the sidelong glances at church, the whispers at school. He'd kept his truth buried deep, locked away behind a smile he'd perfected by 16. But tonight, it had all unraveled. A single photo on his phone, a fleeting moment with a boy from the next town over, had been enough to bring his father's fist crashing down, not on Ezra's face, but on his heart. He walked past the gas station, its fluorescent lights buzzing like a warning, past the shuttered bookstore where he'd spent hours dreaming of worlds kinder than this one. His sneakers squished with every step, the cold numbing his toes. He didn't know where he was going, only that he couldn't stop. Stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant feeling the full weight of what had just happened. Across the street, the neon sign of Rosie's Diner flickered, a beacon in the storm. Ezra's stomach growled, a reminder that he hadn't eaten since breakfast. His wallet held $7 and a crumpled grocery receipt. Not enough for a meal, let alone a place to sleep. But the light called to him, promising warmth, if only for a moment. He pushed open the door, the bell jingling softly. The diner was nearly empty, save for a trucker nursing a coffee at the counter and a man in a corner booth, his face half hidden by a newspaper. The smell of fried eggs and bacon hit Ezra like a wave, and for a second, he could almost pretend he was just a kid grabbing a late-night bite, not a runaway with nowhere to go. Sit anywhere. Hon, called Rosie, the diner's namesake, her voice warm but tired. She was wiping down the counter, her graying curls tucked into a loose bun. Ezra nodded, sliding into a booth near the window. The vinyl seat creaked under him, and he set his dripping backpack on the floor, wincing as it left a puddle. He stared at the menu, the words blurring together. His hands shook not from the cold, but from the memory of his father's face, twisted with rage. You think you can bring that filth into my house? He'd shouted, shoving Ezra toward the door. Get out. Don't come back. And Ezra's mother, silent in the corner, hadn't said a word. That silence hurt worse than the yelling. Coffee. Rosie's voice snapped him back. She stood over him, a pot in one hand, a mug in the other. Just water, Ezra mumbled, his voice hoarse. He couldn't afford coffee, not when he didn't know where his next dollar would come from. Rosie raised an eyebrow but didn't push. Water it is. You look like you've been through it. Kid, you okay? Ezra forced a smile, the one he'd practiced for years. Yeah, just caught in the rain. She didn't buy it, could see it in her eyes, but she nodded and walked away. Ezra's gaze drifted to the window, where the rain painted rivers on the glass. He felt like he was drowning in them. Across the diner, the man in the corner booth lowered his newspaper. Marcus Kane was 32, with a face that carried stories he didn't tell. His dark eyes, sharp but kind, locked onto Ezra. He'd seen kids like this before, lost, broken, carrying the kind of pain that clung like damp clothes. Marcus had been in Willow Creek for 3 days, passing through on his way to nowhere in particular. He wasn't looking for trouble, but something about the kid in the soaked hoodie tugged at him. Marcus folded his newspaper and took a sip of his coffee, watching as Ezra hunched over the table, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on the formica. The kid looked like he was holding himself together with sheer will, and Marcus knew that looked too well. He'd worn it himself, years ago, when he'd left his own small town behind. "Hey," Marcus called softly, just loud enough to reach Ezra's booth. Ezra's head snapped up, his eyes wary. "You look like you could use a hot meal." Ezra blinked, caught off guard. I'm fine," he said, but his voice cracked, betraying him. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low but steady. "Nobody's fine in a storm like that. Let me buy you a burger. No strings." Ezra hesitated, pride warring with hunger. He didn't know this man, didn't know why he'd offer anything to a stranger. But the warmth of the diner, the ache in his stomach, and the weight of the night pushed him to nod. "Okay," he said quietly. "Thanks." Marcus waved Rosie over, ordering a burger and fries for Ezra, and another coffee for himself. As Rosie scribbled the order, Ezra studied the stranger. Marcus had a quiet strength about him, like someone who'd seen enough of the world to know its sharp edges but hadn't let them cut too deep. His leather jacket was worn, his boots scuffed, but his eyes held a warmth that made Ezra feel seen, not judged, not pitted, just seen. The food came, and Ezra ate slowly, savoring each bite like it might be his last. Marcus didn't press him for conversation, just sipped his coffee and watched the rain. But the silence wasn't heavy, it was safe, like a pause before something big. "You got a place to go tonight?" Marcus asked finally, his tone casual but deliberate. Ezra froze, a fry halfway to his mouth. He wanted to lie, to say he had it all figured out, but the truth slipped out. "No." Marcus nodded, like he'd expected that. "I've got a motel room across town. Nothing fancy, but it's dry. You can crash there if you want." Ezra's heart thudded. He didn't know this man, didn't know if he could trust him. But the rain was still falling, and the thought of sleeping on the street made his chest tighten. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus leaned back, his eyes distant for a moment. "Because someone helped me once, and I promised I'd pay it back." Ezra didn't know what to say to that. He didn't know what kind of debt Marcus was carrying, or why he'd chosen him to repay it. But for the first time that night, he felt a flicker of hope, like maybe, just maybe, the rain wouldn't drown him after all. The motel room smelled of stale cigarettes and cheap air freshener, but it was dry, and to Ezra, that made it a palace. Marcus tossed his keys onto a chipped wooden table and gestured to the second bed, its sheets crisp but faded. "It's yours for the night," he said, shrugging off his jacket. "Bathroom's there if you want to dry off." Ezra stood just inside the door, his backpack dripping onto the carpet. He felt like an intruder, like he didn't belong in this small, borrowed space. I don't even know your name," he said, his voice small. "Marcus," the man replied, kicking off his boots. "And you?" "Ezra." Marcus nodded, like the name fit. "Get some sleep, Ezra. We'll figure out tomorrow when it comes." Ezra wanted to ask what that meant, what we meant, but exhaustion pulled at him like gravity. He peeled off his soaked hoodie, hanging it over a chair, and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress creaked, but it was soft, and the weight of the night pressed him down until he was lying back, staring at the cracked ceiling. Sleep didn't come easy. His mind replayed the fight, his father's voice, his mother's silence, the photo that had started it all. It was a selfie, him and Jamie, the boy from Lancaster he'd met at a summer art camp. They'd been sitting on a park bench, shoulders touching, Jamie's smile bright enough to make Ezra forget the world for a moment. He hadn't meant for his father to see it. He'd been so careful. But one unlocked phone, one glance, and everything had collapsed. Ezra turned onto his side, curling into himself. He didn't know where Jamie was now, didn't know if he'd ever see him again. The thought made his chest ache. A hollow kind of pain that felt like it could swallow him whole. Across the room, Marcus lay awake, listening to the rain and the soft, uneven breaths of the kid he'd brought in from the storm. He didn't know why he'd done it, not really. He'd spent years keeping his distance, moving from town to town, never staying long enough to get tangled in anyone's story. But something about Ezra reminded him of himself at that age, scared, alone, cast out for being something the world wasn't ready for. Marcus had been 16 when his own father threw him out. Not for being gay, hadn't figured that out yet, but for asking too many questions. For wanting more than the narrow life his family had planned. A stranger had taken him in then. A truck driver named Sam who'd given him a ride, a meal, and a few bucks to keep going. Sam hadn't asked for anything in return. Just said, pass it on when you can. Marcus had carried that debt for 16 years, waiting for the right moment to repay it. Maybe this was it. Morning came too soon. Gray light filtering through the motel's thin curtains. Ezra woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Marcus rummaging through a duffel bag. Got some clean clothes if you want him, Marcus said without looking up. Might be a bit big, but they're dry. Ezra hesitated, then took the offered t-shirt and jeans. They smelled faintly of cedar and motor oil. A strange but comforting mix. He changed in the bathroom, avoiding his reflection in the mirror. He didn't want to see the shadows under his eyes or the fear still lingering there. They sat at the small table, sharing a bag of donuts Marcus had grabbed from the motel lobby. So, Marcus said, breaking the silence, what's your plan? Ezra stared at the donut in his hand, its glaze sticking to his fingers. I don't have one, he admitted. I've got $7. No phone. No, anything. Marcus leaned back, his chair creaking. You got family somewhere else? Friends? Ezra shook his head. My dad's all I had. My mom, she doesn't talk much. And my friends, he stopped, his throat tight. His friends had drifted away when he started pulling back, hiding who he was. Jamie was the only one who'd really known him. And now he was gone too. Marcus didn't push. Instead, he pulled a map from his bag, spreading it across the table. I'm heading west, he said. Got a job lined up in Denver. Fixing bikes. You can come with me. At least that far. Get you out of this town. Give you a chance to figure things out. Ezra's eyes widened. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Marcus shrugged, but his eyes were serious. I know enough. You're a kid who got dealt a bad hand. I've been there. And I'm not leaving you to sleep in the rain. Ezra wanted to argue, to say he could handle it. But the truth was he couldn't. Not yet. Okay, he said finally. But just to Denver. Marcus nodded, folding the map. Just to Denver. They packed up, Ezra's damp clothes stuffed into a plastic bag. The rain had stopped, leaving the world clean and sharp, like it had been washed of yesterday's sins. Marcus's truck was an old Chevy, its paint chipped but its engine steady. Ezra climbed into the passenger seat, the leather worn but warm. As they pulled onto the highway, Willow Creek shrinking in the rear view, Ezra felt something shift inside him, not hope. Not yet, but the possibility of it. The road stretched out, endless and uncertain. But for the first time in hours, Ezra wasn't alone. The highway hummed beneath the Chevy's tires, a steady rhythm that lulled Ezra into a kind of trance. Fields blurred past, gold and green under a sky that couldn't decide if it wanted to clear. He stole glances at Marcus, who drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the gear shift. The man didn't talk much, but his silence wasn't cold, it was patient, like he was giving Ezra space to breathe. You ever been out of Pennsylvania? Marcus asked, breaking the quiet. Ezra shook his head. Farthest I've gone is Lancaster. Art camp last summer. His voice caught on the memory of Jamie, the boy who'd made him feel like he could be himself, if only for a moment. Marcus nodded, his eyes on the road. World's bigger than Willow Creek. You'll see. Ezra wanted to believe him, but the world felt small right now, shrunk to the size of this truck and the ache in his chest. He leaned against the window, the glass cool against his temple. What's Denver like? Big. Loud. Full of people trying to start over. Marcus's voice had a weight to it. Like he was one of those people. It's got mountains. Though. Makes you feel small in a good way. Ezra tried to picture it. But all he could see was his father's face. The way his eyes had burned with disgust. He pushed the image away, focusing on the road signs flashing by. They stopped at a gas station in Ohio. The air thick with the smell of fuel and fried food. Marcus handed Ezra a $10 bill. Grab us some snacks. Whatever you like. Ezra hesitated, then took the money and headed inside. The clerk, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Cheryl, barely looked at him as he picked out chips and a couple of sodas. He felt invisible, but not in a bad way. For the first time in days, no one was judging him. Back in the truck, they ate in silence, the crunch of chips filling the space. Ezra wanted to ask Marcus about himself, where he came from, why he was helping, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he asked, "You always pick up strays?" Marcus chuckled. A low, warm sound. Only the ones who look like they're worth saving. Ezra didn't know what to make of that. He wasn't sure he was worth saving. Not after what his father had said. But Marcus's words lingered. A small spark in the dark. They drove through the day, stopping only for gas and a quick burger at a roadside stand. By dusk, they were in Indiana. The sky bruised purple and orange. Marcus pulled into a rest stop. The lot half empty except for a few semis and a family in a minivan. "We'll sleep here," he said. "Save the motel money for Denver." Ezra nodded, though the thought of sleeping in the truck made his back ache preemptively. They reclined the seats, and Marcus handed him a blanket from the back. It was scratchy but warm, and Ezra wrapped it around himself, trying to ignore the knot in his stomach. "You ever think about going back?" Ezra asked, his voice barely audible. Marcus didn't answer right away. He stared out the windshield, where moths danced in the glow of a streetlight. "Tried once," he said finally. "Didn't work out. Some doors, once they close, they stay closed." Ezra swallowed, thinking of his own closed door. What do you do when you can't go back? You keep moving forward. Marcus's voice was steady, like he'd said it to himself 1,000 times. You find people who see you for you. They're out there. Ezra wanted to believe him, but the weight of his father's words still pressed down. He closed his eyes, letting the hum of the truck and the rhythm of Marcus's breathing pull him toward sleep. The next morning, they were back on the road before dawn. Ezra woke to Marcus handing him a granola bar and a bottle of water. "Eat," he said. "Long day ahead." They crossed into Illinois, the landscape flattening into endless fields. Ezra's thoughts drifted to Jamie again. He wondered if Jamie had faced the same kind of rejection. If he was out there somewhere, feeling as lost as Ezra did. He wanted to call him, to hear his voice, but his phone was back in Willow Creek. Probably smashed by now. "You're quiet," Marcus said, glancing over. "What's on your mind?" Ezra hesitated, then decided to be honest. There was someone back home. His name was Jamie. He's the reason my dad, he stopped. The words too heavy. Marcus didn't push, but his expression softened. "Sounds like he meant a lot to you." "He did," Ezra said, his voice breaking. "He was the first person who made me feel okay, like I wasn't wrong for being me." Marcus nodded, his hands tightening on the wheel. "That's worth holding on to, even if it hurts now." Ezra didn't know how to respond, so he just nodded, staring out the window as the miles rolled by. The pain of losing Jamie, of losing his home, was still raw, but Marcus's words gave him something to cling to, a reminder that he wasn't alone. Not entirely. By nightfall, they were in Missouri, the air warmer, the stars brighter. Marcus pulled into another rest stop, and they shared a pizza from a nearby gas station. Ezra felt a strange gratitude for these small moments: the food, the blanket, the quiet company of a man who didn't ask for anything but gave what he could. As he drifted off, the blanket pulled tight around him. Ezra thought of Denver, of mountains and new beginnings. He didn't know what waited there. But for the first time, he let himself imagine it might be something good. The road to Denver felt like a lifeline, each mile pulling Ezra further from the wreckage of Willow Creek. The truck's radio played soft country tunes, the kind Marcus liked, though he kept the volume low, as if he knew Ezra needed quiet more than music. They were in Kansas now, the landscape a sea of wheat and sky, endless and open in a way that made Ezra feel both free and untethered. You ever think about what you want to do? Marcus asked, his eyes flicking to Ezra. Like, long term. Ezra shrugged, picking at a loose thread on his borrowed jeans. I used to want to be an artist. Draw comics. Maybe. But that was before. He trailed off, not wanting to say it. Before your dad. Marcus finished for him, his voice gentle but firm. Ezra nodded, his throat tight. He said it was a waste. Said I needed a real job. Like him. He's a mechanic. Works at the mill. Too. When they need him. Marcus snorted softly. Sounds like he wanted you to be him. Not you. Ezra looked at him, surprised by the bluntness. Yeah, he said after a moment. I guess he did. They stopped at a diner in a town called Salina, its sign proclaiming best pie in Kansas. The place was packed. Families and truckers crammed into booths, the air thick with the smell of coffee and fried chicken. Ezra felt exposed, like everyone could see the word outcast written across his forehead. But no one stared. No one whispered. They just ate and laughed, oblivious to the storm he carried. Marcus ordered them both pineapple for himself, cherry for Ezra. You gotta try this, he said, sliding the plate over. Life's too short for bad pie. Ezra managed a small smile. The first in days. The pie was good. The crust flaky. The filling tart and sweet. For a moment, he could pretend he was just a guy on a road trip, not a kid running from his life. As they ate, Marcus told him about Denver, about the bike shop where he'd be working, about the mountains that turned pink at sunrise. It's a place where people don't care so much about who you are, he said. They're too busy living their own lives. Ezra wanted to believe it, but doubt gnawed at him. What if I don't fit in there either? You will, Marcus said, his voice certain. You're tougher than you think. Ezra didn't feel tough. He felt like a kid playing at being brave, like any moment the world would see through him. But Marcus's confidence was a lifeline, and he clung to it. They hit the road again, the sun dipping low, painting the sky in streaks of gold. Ezra's thoughts drifted to Jamie again. He wondered if he could find him, if he could track him down in Denver or somewhere else. The thought of seeing him again, of feeling that spark, made his heart race. But it also scared him. What if Jamie didn't want him anymore? What if he'd moved on? You're thinking about him again, Marcus said. Not a question. Ezra flushed. Is it that obvious? Marcus chuckled. You get this look. Like you're a million miles away. Ezra hesitated, then let it spill. I keep thinking about what I'd say if I saw him. Jamie. I didn't even get to explain. You know. My dad he took my phone. And that was it. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, if he's worth it, he'll understand. And if he doesn't, you're better off without him. Ezra nodded, but the words didn't ease the ache. He wanted Jamie to be worth it. He wanted to believe in something good. They stopped for the night in a small motel just over the Colorado border. The room was cleaner than the last, with 2 beds and a TV that actually worked. Marcus flipped to a rerun of some old sitcom, but Ezra barely noticed. He was too busy thinking about Denver, about what it would mean to start over. You ever been in love? Ezra asked suddenly, the question slipping out before he could stop it. Marcus raised an eyebrow, caught off guard. Once, he said after a pause. Didn't work out. But yeah, I know what it's like. What happened? Marcus leaned back, his hands behind his head. He wanted a life I couldn't give him. Stability. A house. The whole deal. I wasn't ready for that. Still not sure I am. Ezra nodded, trying to imagine Marcus in love. It was hard to picture, but the sadness in his voice was real. Do you miss him? Sometimes, Marcus admitted. But life moves on. You learn to carry it. Ezra lay back, staring at the ceiling. He didn't know if he could carry this Jamie, his father, the weight of being himself in a world that didn't always want him. But Marcus made it seem possible, like the road ahead wasn't just a path to nowhere. As he drifted off, the TV's laugh track fading into the background, Ezra let himself dream of Denver, not just the city, but the idea of it. A place where he could be Ezra, not his father's shame, not a secret to be hidden. A place where he could find Jamie, or maybe just find himself. Denver rose from the horizon like a promise, its skyline sharp against the jagged peaks of the Rockies. Ezra pressed his face to the truck's window, his breath fogging the glass. The city felt alive, even from a distance, its lights pulsing like a heartbeat. He'd never seen anything like it, not in Willow Creek, where the tallest building was the church steeple. Marcus glanced over, a half-smile tugging at his lips. Told you it was big. Ezra nodded, too awed to speak. The closer they got, the more real it felt, a place where he could disappear, or maybe become someone new. The truck wove through traffic, past skyscrapers and street vendors, until Marcus pulled into a gravel lot behind a brick building with a sign that read Kane's Cycles. It was his new workplace, a bike shop that smelled of rubber and grease. Come on, Marcus said, grabbing his duffel. Let's get you settled. The shop was closed, but Marcus had a key. Inside, it was a maze of bikes and tools, the air heavy with the scent of metal. A small apartment sat above the shop, a one-bedroom with a pull-out couch. You can crash here for a bit, Marcus said, tossing Ezra a spare key, till you figure out what's next. Ezra clutched the key, its weight grounding him. You don't have to keep doing this, he said. You've already done enough. Marcus shrugged, his eyes avoiding Ezra's. It's not about have to. It's about what's right. Ezra didn't know how to argue with that. He set his backpack on the couch, feeling like he was borrowing someone else's life. The apartment was sparse but clean, with a view of the mountains that made his chest ache with possibility. That night, Marcus took him to a diner down the street, a place called the Rusty Spoon. It was different from Rosie Slaughter, brighter, with a mix of people Ezra had never seen in Willow Creek. There were couples holding hands, some same-sex, some not, and no one seemed to care. Ezra watched them, his heart twisting with a mix of envy and hope. You okay? Marcus asked, cutting into his pancakes. Yeah, Ezra lied, then sighed. It's just different here. Good different. Marcus nodded. Denver's got its problems, but it's got room for people like us. Ezra's eyes snapped to him. Us. Marcus paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. Yeah, he said finally. I'm gay. Ezra. Been out since I was 20. Took me a while to get there, but I did. Ezra stared, the words sinking in. He'd suspected. Maybe. But hearing it out loud was different. It made Marcus more real, more like someone who could understand the storm inside him. Does it get easier? He asked, his voice small. Some days, Marcus said. Some days it's still hard. But you find people who make it worth it. Ezra thought of Jamie, of the way his laugh had felt like sunlight. He wanted to find him, to see if that feeling was still there. But he didn't know where to start, and the thought of trying scared him as much as it thrilled him. The next day, Marcus got him a job at the bike shop, cleaning tools and organizing parts. It wasn't much, but it was money, and it gave Ezra something to do besides think. The shop's owner, a gruff woman named Lena, took a liking to him, showing him how to fix a flat tire and teasing him about his small-town vibe. Ezra liked her. She was tough, but kind. Like Marcus. After work, Ezra wandered the city, his $7 long gone, but his eyes wide with wonder. Denver was loud, chaotic, alive in a way that made Willow Creek feel like a dream he'd woken from. He passed a community center with a rainbow flag out front, and his heart skipped. He didn't go in yet, but he memorized the address, promising himself he'd come back. That night, he asked Marcus, How do you find someone when you don't know where they are? Marcus raised an eyebrow. Your boy from back home. Ezra nodded, his cheeks warm. Jamie. I don't even know if he's here. But I need to try. Marcus leaned back, thinking. Start small. Social media, if you can get access. Or that community center you were staring at today. Ezra blinked. You saw me. Saw you lingering like a kid outside a candy store. Marcus said, grinning. Go check it out. They've got resources. People who can help. Ezra nodded, the idea both terrifying and exhilarating. The next day, he went to the community center, his heart pounding as he pushed open the door. Inside, it was warm, filled with voices and laughter. A woman at the front desk smiled at him, her badge reading Volunteer Maya. New here? She asked, her voice kind. Yeah, Ezra said, his hands shoved in his pockets. I'm looking for someone, and maybe a place to start over. Maya's smile widened. You're in the right place. Let's talk. She sat him down, handed him a coffee, and listened as he told her about Jamie, about Willow Creek, about the rain. She didn't judge, didn't flinch. She just nodded, then gave him a list of resources, shelters, job programs, even a computer he could use to search for Jamie. As he left, the weight in his chest felt a little lighter. He didn't have Jamie yet, but he had a start. And he had Marcus, and Lena, and now Maya, people who saw him, who didn't turn away. Ezra's days in Denver settled into a rhythm: work at the bike shop, evenings at the community center, nights on Marcus's pull-out couch. The city was starting to feel less like a maze and more like a map he could learn to navigate. He saved every penny he earned, dreaming of a place of his own. But his real focus was finding Jamie. The community center's computer became his lifeline. He didn't have Jamie's number or social media, but he searched anyway, typing variations of his name into every platform he could think of. Jamie Carter. James Carter. J. Carter. Nothing turned up. But Ezra didn't give up. He couldn't. Jamie was the one piece of his old life he wanted to hold on to. The one person who'd seen him before the world had tried to break him. Maya helped, showing him how to search public records and community boards. She introduced him to a group of queer kids who met at the center every week. And for the first time, Ezra felt like he belonged somewhere. They shared stories, laughed, cried, and Ezra realized he wasn't the only one who'd been kicked out, who'd been told he was wrong for existing. It didn't erase the pain, but it made it easier to carry. One night, after a group meeting, Maya pulled him aside. You're doing good, Ezra, she said. You're stronger than you know. He shook his head. I don't feel strong. I feel lost. She smiled, her eyes warm. Lost is just a stop on the way to found. Keep going. Her words stuck with him, echoing Marcus's advice to keep moving forward. He started drawing again, sketching in a cheap notebook he'd bought at a dollar store. Comics, like he'd always wanted. They were rough, but they were his stories of kids like him, finding their way in a world that didn't always want them. Marcus noticed the sketches one evening, flipping through the notebook while Ezra was in the shower. These are good, he said when Ezra came out, towel around his neck. You've got something here. Ezra flushed, embarrassed but pleased. Just messing around. Don't sell yourself short, Marcus said, handing the notebook back. You've got a voice. Use it. Ezra started sharing his comics at the community center, and the response surprised him. Kids liked them, connected with them. One girl, Sam, even offered to help him digitize them, showing him how to use free software on the center's computers. It felt like a spark, like maybe his dreams weren't as dead as he'd thought. But Jamie was still a ghost. Weeks turned into a month, and Ezra's hope started to fray. He wondered if Jamie had moved on, if he'd forgotten him. The thought hurt more than he could say, but he kept searching, kept hoping. One evening, as he scrolled through a local art group's page, he froze. A photo, grainy but unmistakable Jamie, standing in front of a mural, paint on his hands, smiling that smile that had always made Ezra's heart skip. The caption read, "Local artist Jamie Carter at the Denver Art Walk." Ezra's hands shook as he showed the screen to Maya. "That's him," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Maya grinned. "Well, what are you waiting for? The art walk's this weekend. Go find him." Ezra spent the next 2 days in a haze, nerves and excitement warring inside him. Marcus gave him the day off, clapping him on the shoulder. "Go get your boy," he said, his grin wide. The art walk was in a park downtown, booths and murals lining the paths, music drifting through the air. Ezra wandered, his heart pounding, scanning every face. He almost missed him. Jamie was at a small booth, showing his paintings to a couple. He looked different, his hair longer, his frame leaner. But it was him. Ezra stood frozen, his breath shallow. What if Jamie didn't want to see him? What if he'd moved on? But then Jamie looked up, and their eyes met, and the world stopped. "Ezra." Jamie's voice was soft, disbelieving. He stepped around the booth, closing the distance. "Is that you?" Ezra nodded, his throat too tight to speak. Jamie reached out, then stopped, like he wasn't sure it was okay. I thought I'd never see you again," Jamie said, his eyes glistening. "My dad," Ezra started, then stopped. He didn't need to explain. Jamie's face said he understood. "I'm sorry," Jamie said, his voice breaking. "I tried to call, but your number didn't work. I thought you'd, I don't know, changed your mind." "Never," Ezra said, the word fierce. "I didn't have a choice." They stood there, the crowd fading away, and then Jamie pulled him into a hug, tight and warm and real. Ezra buried his face in Jamie's shoulder, breathing him in, and for the first time in weeks, he felt whole. They talked for hours, sitting on a bench as the art walk buzzed around them. Jamie had left Lancaster after his own family drama, landing in Denver with a cousin who didn't care who he loved. He was painting, surviving, trying to build a life. "I kept hoping you'd find me," he said, his hand brushing Ezra's. "I did," Ezra said, and the words felt like a victory. Ezra and Jamie spent every spare moment together after the art walk. They'd meet at coffee shops, sketch together in the park, or just walk the city, talking about everything and nothing. Jamie's presence was like a balm, soothing the wounds Ezra hadn't realized were still bleeding. But even as he fell back into the rhythm of their connection, he couldn't shake the fear that it could all disappear again. Marcus noticed the change in him, the way Ezra smiled more, the way his sketches grew bolder. "You found him," he said one night. Not a question. Ezra nodded, his cheeks warm. "Yeah, he's still the same. Maybe better." Marcus grinned. "Good. Hold on to that." Ezra wanted to, but the shadow of Willow Creek lingered. He dreamed of his father sometimes, his voice echoing, "You're no son of mine." He'd wake sweating, Jamie's face in his mind, and wonder if he deserved this happiness. One evening, Jamie took him to a gallery where one of his paintings was on display. It was a small space, packed with artists and locals, the air buzzing with excitement. Jamie's painting was a riot of color, a figure standing in rain but reaching for a sliver of light. "It's you," Jamie said quietly, standing beside Ezra. "I painted it after I lost you." Ezra's eyes burned. He didn't know what to say, so he just squeezed Jamie's hand, hoping it said enough. Life in Denver wasn't perfect. Ezra's job at the bike shop was grueling some days, and money was tight. But he had a plan now: save enough for a small apartment, keep drawing, maybe even sell his comics someday. Jamie was part of that plan, a piece of the future Ezra was starting to believe in. One night, as they sat on the roof of Marcus's apartment, the city sprawling below, Jamie turned to him. "I love you," he said, the words simple but heavy. "I don't care what happens next, as long as you're in it." Ezra's heart stopped, then started again, faster. "I love you too," he said, and it felt like a vow. They kissed under the stars, the mountains watching, and Ezra felt something settle inside him, a certainty that he was where he was meant to be. Months later, Ezra got a letter. It was from his mother, forwarded through the community center. He opened it with shaking hands, Marcus and Jamie watching from across the room. Her handwriting was small, careful, like she was afraid of the words. Ezra, I'm sorry. I should have said something that night. I should have stopped him. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I'm trying to understand. I miss you. Mom. Ezra read it again, then set it down. He didn't know if he could forgive her. Not yet. But the letter was a crack in the door his father had slammed shut. A possibility he hadn't expected. Marcus clapped a hand on his shoulder. You don't have to decide now, he said. You've got time. Ezra nodded, grateful for Marcus's steady presence, for Jamie's love, for the community he'd found. He thought of the stranger who'd helped Marcus all those years ago, the debt Marcus had repaid by helping him. Ezra knew he'd carry that debt now, pass it on when he could. He looked at Jamie, at the city lights, at the mountains standing guard. He wasn't the boy in the rain anymore. He was Ezra, artist, survivor, loved, and that was enough.